On Monday night, the Boston Celtics regained the title for the most championships won in the history of the NBA with banner 18. Now that the season's over, I thought we should take a deep dive into something that's been circulating around the NBA this last month. That this Celtics title run was one of the easiest in recent history. So I have thoroughly analysed the data to determine the validity of these claims, and the results were truly astonishing. Trust me, if you're somebody who gets themselves lost in the endless scroll of TikTok or YouTube, you should really protect yourself by using NordVPN. A VPN is like your personal bodyguard when going online, keeping hackers and scammers off your systems and away from your hard-earned money. And let's be honest, your terrible NBA takes. I use NordVPN to keep myself safe online, and for a limited time only, if you use the link in my description, you'll not only get 72% off your first 2 years with Nord, but you'll also be supporting this channel. With Jason Tatum winning his first NBA championship on Monday night, the discourse has been very mixed. Some people love to see it, and some don't. But at the end of the day, where does this championship rank in terms of difficulty? What championship team had the hardest run to a title, and which championship team had the easiest? To find out, I started to research the best championship runs in NBA history. I decided to go by winning percentage instead of overall record, because even as early as the 1990s, the first round only consisted of 5 games, giving an unfair advantage to the more recent teams. With this being said, the best all-time postseason winning percentage belongs to the 2017 Golden State Warriors, who had a winning percentage of 94%. Then followed by the 2001 Lakers with 93%, and in third was the 1983 Philadelphia 76ers, who won 92% of their playoff games. As for the current Boston Celtics, they had a winning percentage of 84%. But this still doesn't tell us much, as it doesn't take into consideration the strength of schedule, as some teams play weaker opponents on a way to a title compared to others. But that does not impact how good a team truly was. But luckily for us, there is a statistic that's built to include the strength of schedule to find the overall hardest playoff run. This Reddit user applied the simple rating system to come to an almost unbelievable conclusion. The SRS takes into account the team's strength of schedule and average point differential per game to give a fairly accurate assessment of how good a team was in the regular season, which we can then use to predict how good they were in the postseason. For instance, the 2021 Milwaukee Bucks were winning games by an average of 5.89 points per game and played a schedule against opponents that were 0.32 points worse than average, giving them an SRS of 5.57, which ranked 4th in the league that season behind the Jazz, Clippers, and Suns. The SRS is a great indicator of how great or terrible a team was in the regular season. Then he would go through every NBA champion's playoff run, and if a team that they played in a series had a lower SRS rating, he would add the difference to the champion's score, indicating an easier run. And if a team had a higher SRS rating, then the difference would be taken away from the champion's score. So just like golf, the lower the score, the harder the run. With this only being done in 2021, I updated his rankings to include the last 3 champions, and I found something truly unbelievable. This is a complete list that shows us every championship in NBA history ranked hardest to easiest. The hardest championship ever won was the 1995 Houston Rockets. Led by the lone all-star Hakeem Olajuwon, the Rockets would win back-to-back titles after finishing the regular season as only the 5 seed, with a 47-35 record. Throughout the playoffs, every single round, they played a team that was better than them, making this by far the toughest playoff run in NBA history. In second is the 2001 Lakers, which is absolutely unbelievable, as not only did they have the second hardest run in NBA history, but they nearly swept the playoffs, going 16-1, beating the Blazers, Kings, Spurs, and Sixers on the way to the second hardest title ever won. So if you're ever wondering who was the most dominant team in the last 25 years, I think you have your answer. Then as we move on down, we get to some of the most improbable championship runs ever, like the 2011 Dallas Mavericks, the 06 Heat, and the 2019 Toronto Raptors. Then we move on down a little further, and we stumble upon the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers, who are in a unique predicament. Because they faced a relatively easy Eastern Conference, the SRS would have been quite high heading into the NBA Finals. But because of their opponent in those finals being the 73-win Golden State Warriors, their SRS rating would plummet as a result, giving them a lower score, indicating that it was still a hard championship to win. Then if we keep on going, we get to the middle of the road championships. Still a difficult title because it's a championship, but not as challenging as the championship championships we just covered. Then on the final section, something really stood out to me. First, 4 of Michael Jordan's 6 championships fall in the 20 easiest titles ever won, with 1996 being by far the easiest out of the 6. And it's the same story for the Golden State Warriors, as 3 out of their 4 titles with Stephen Curry land in the bottom 10, with 2018 actually being their hardest run, which adds up. As in the Western Conference Finals, the Houston Rockets were on the verge of beating them, and if it wasn't for Chris Paul's injury and 27 straight missed three-pointers in a home closeout Game 7, Houston could have been champions. But this is where the level of difficulty of this Celtics run gets exposed. With the highest SRS playoff run in NBA history by a wide margin, the 2024 Boston Celtics just won the easiest championship ever. With a 45-point SRS rating, this title was historically easy, being 32 points clear of the 2023 Nuggets, who played 3 play-in teams on the way to a title. I had to double check to see if I was making the correct calculations, but to my amazement, they are all right. There are 3 factors that come into play as why the Celtics have a higher score, and the first one is of course the level of competition they played. The Celtics played the 46-win Heat in the first round, then the 48-win Cavs in the second round, the 47-win Pacers in the conference finals, and in the finals they played the 5-seeded 50-win Dallas Mavericks. But not only was the competition that they played extremely easy, but to make matters worse for Boston, the SRS does not take into consideration playoff injuries, which played a huge part to the Celtics having an even easier run than this. As if Giannis and Damian Lillard don't get injured against the Pacers, Indiana are likely not in the conference finals, as Boston successfully dodged all of the toughest teams in the East. The second reason why the SRS is so incredibly high is because of how dominant the Celtics were in the regular season. During the regular season, the Celtics outscored their opponents by a whopping 11 points per game, leading to an SRS rating of 10.75 points, when factoring in their opponent's average. In the first round, the Miami Heat only had an SRS rating of 110, which gives the Celtics an additional 9.65 points to add to their score. The Heat, Cavs, and Pacers weren't dominating teams during the regular season, with the Pacers having the highest SRS score of 2.75 points. However, in the NBA Finals, the Dallas Mavericks had been the best team in the Western Conference over the last 2 months of basketball, but their SRS rating didn't reflect that of an elite team, only having a score of 230. This was because until the trade deadline, the Mavericks weren't very good, which brought down their overall score. If Dallas had Gafford and Washington for the entire season, they would likely have a higher SRS. But even if Dallas had an SRS rating of 6 points, this only drops the Celtics down to 39, which is still by far the easiest run in NBA history. And if there was a stat that could somehow implement playoff injuries, I'm sure this rating would be even higher. Remember what I said about Jordan's easy titles? Well, it wasn't the same for his other 2, as his 1993 title ranks in the top 25 hardest championships ever won. I guess what I'm trying to say is a championship is a championship. As who knows, if the Celtics win another title in the seasons to come, it might end up being one of the hardest titles ever won. You just never know. The way I choose to see it is that the Celtics were playing who was in front of them, and it wasn't like they were struggling against these teams either, only losing 3 games on the way to the championship. This video was not designed to discredit or disprove this Celtics season or their accomplishment, but to shed a different light on the situation at hand, using analytics and facts, instead of nitpicking if Jason Tatum was happy or not when Jaylen Brown won the Finals MVP. So what do you think? Should there be an asterisk beside the 2024 Boston Celtics, or will you choose to remember this team as an all-time great one? Let me know in the comments below.